Welcome back to Chaos Corner. It's your old buddy, the Guardian of Chaos, Big Daddy, and I tell it like it is. I'll say that to say this. Down here in the bunker, we're thinking now, because we redid the measurements, we're closer to 20 feet under the surface of the earth. Live to tape, same day coverage, show number 36. Fans, where are you going to get this in the IWC for this kind of content and entertainment? We're down here, as I said, and today is going to be a little different of a show. So I want you to stay tuned. I want you to kick back. Listen, it's another snow day. It's still continuing to snow across this great country. So I'm down here in the bunker to entertain you. And I'll say that to say this. You've heard me talk about it before, but we're going to really delve into Capt.Lou Albano and Bert Sugar's book, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Pro Wrestling. And this is for all my fans and followers and all the haters out there, and even for myself. So follow me on all social media platforms. Kick back today. Get a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a beer, whatever it is that is your pleasure. Follow me on all social media platforms. We're on Twitter and YouTube now. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me, obviously, I said on YouTube and Twitter. We're also on Twitch. We're on D Live. We're on Rumble, which is really a waste of time. I'm not into debating people. And of course, my number one platform that's expanding right now, Gab. If you want your freedom of speech and an excellent social media platform, unless you want to stay off of them altogether, and I wouldn't blame you for that. But stay here. This is going to be a different show. We're not talking about the WWE Elimination Chamber coming up this weekend or the great week of pro wrestling that we had. We're going to delve into some books with the Guardian of Chaos, and this is what we're delving into right here. Let me lower the distraction. Meet me back on YouTube. You see I'm paying homage to the ultimate G.O.C. Don't you dare miss it. All right, fans, welcome back. Let me get the distraction here. We're down in the bunker, show number 36, live to tape. I want to get the distraction down. This is going to be a show like none other. For my friends out there in the IWC podcast world, entertainment, radio, video, streaming, whatever it is that you do, I'm happy that you're here. So we're going to see if we can find something interesting. But fans, I've alluded to this and I've broken down certain sections of this. This is show number 36. I started talking about this book, which was printed in 1999, so over 20 years ago, by the great Bert Randolph Sugar and Capt.Lou Albano. Listen, a match made in heaven. It's by Alpha Books. The foreword is by Bill Goldberg. That's right. Not Oldberg, Goldberg. We're going to start off there. I've read a few things on this before. I gave you the universally recognized world champions of wrestling, which started in 1908. So you will be getting a history lesson. This is what happens here on certain shows of Chaos Corner. You know that I cover everything in the IWC, in the pro wrestling world, and sports, and life, and everything else in between. We're unscripted. We're unedited. There's no mute button. There's no snippets. There's no clips. We try to keep it at an hour and 15 minutes. Sometimes it's 35 or 45 minutes. But right now on this channel, there's over 600 classic videos from the current Chaos Corner, show number 36 that you're watching, to hundreds and hundreds of videos, whether they be on the road or they be in-ring action or interviews or promos or vignettes, and they only average 2 to 3 minutes. And that's usually what the attention span is, unless it's on a live stream, and we haven't gotten to, we do live to tape, same day coverage, but we have not gotten to the live stream yet and chatting, and that's what it's all about. So we touched on this book before. Fans, it's a must-read. I feel like I helped write this book. I'm going to be honest with you. I lived this life, and I was fortunate enough to pick up this book virtually when it was sold. Back then, in the United States, it was only $18.95, and you can get it in Canada for $28.95, and the UK for $12.99. I couldn't imagine what it is now. A lot of the cover images and a lot of the photos in here were taken by the legendary photographer Timothy A. Walker. Timothy took a lot of my photos in the past, back in the day. What an unbelievable guy and a great photographer who was always at ringside and told the story for the boys and to the fans. I can compare Timothy A. Walker in the same class as the legendary George Napolitano and Bill Apter. Let's just put it that way. So that right there is worth it alone right here. And you know, Bert Randolph Sugar, God rest his soul, and Capt.Lou, who was one of my mentors, and we've talked about that on past shows. Bert Randolph Sugar just was one of the most amazing men. He wrote over 56 sports related books, if you know your history. uh, Famed sports writer, unbelievable author of, or like I said, 56 related books, including 100 greatest ugly of the history of wrestling. So that's something you're also going to want to go out there if you're a fan. I'm big on the wrestling books. I'm big on documentaries. I'm big on history and research. That's why I am the guardian of chaos, and I tell it like it is. That's why you come here for this content. Again, whether it's one viewer or 5 viewers, 5,000, 500,000, it doesn't matter to the GOC. So that's what we're going to get into here. So stand back, kick back. We're going to do at least an hour, and we'll see what happens. Leave your comments in the comments section. Like, retweet, spread it, share it. I'm not a big fan of Madonna, although I worked a show or two for her back in the 80s in Fort Lauderdale. I'm not a big fan of Madonna, but I do like share. So you know what that means. You see what I did right there? Share. Share this, like, hit the bell. I'm trying to be on here as much as possible, at least a couple of times a week. We're back into the groove, and we're good for 7 to 10 shows a month on here, plus downloading all the other videos that I have in my vast library of Chaos Chronicles. And again, you see the legendary Samoan dynasty that I'm wearing, the Ultimate Oos. This is the picture of Umaga on here. What incredible gear you'll find over at Ultimate Oos in honor of the Samoan dynasty. It really is something. And plus, being down here 20 feet below the surface of the earth, we know what's going on here with the weather in this country, all over the world. Yeah, so much for don't get me started on wind turbines and nuclear fuel and fossil energy, nuclear energy. You know what I'm talking about. So stand by. Let me kick it back here because we're going to delve into it. Thanks for being here on another snow day, and I want everyone to enjoy this show. It'll be up tonight. It's Friday, heading into the weekend. I want everyone to have a great weekend. Enjoy, stay safe. We all know what we're doing out there, and enjoy the product. And I guess you'll watch Elimination Chamber. I'll be watching it Sunday night too. But we're talking about this today. So just give me a second. Bear with me. I know, I get close, I got a face for radio, and then you could see all the storage and stuff down here. But you know what? I really don't give a damn. There's a lot of people say about technical and upgrading. It's about motivation and inspiration and how professional you are. I guess there's a lot to be said for that. There's technical people. That's what they're here for, and I try to learn as much as I can, but it's right here. That's where it is when it comes from the heart and passion and entertainment and knowing what you're doing and just doing it naturally. Sponsors, Red Bull, not yet, but I still support the company. I do want you to go out to my buddy, Mr. Hempel-Stillskin, and that's at sweetheal.com. You knew that I have to throw that in there, right? Sweetheal.com for all your CBD needs. It's for anxiety, it's for inflammation, it's for everyday wellness, it's for athletes, it's for your pets, it's to help you sleep, it's for insomnia. There's so much different usage for Sweet Heal. That's why I speak upon it. If you use the promo code CHAOS, you'll get 25% off. And in this day and age, can't we all use 25% off with the economy and the way things are going? Because nothing's gotten any better in this country, politically or government-wise or anything else-wise, including the pandemic. But I'm not going to sit here and get onto that. I want to talk about this book. This, again, we're almost 10 minutes in. This show's going to be a little bit different. It's not the usual chaos corner of what you're going to get. The bottom line is, as I take a sip off the Red Bull here on Friday morning, going into Friday afternoon, sweetheal.com, Sweet Heal CBD. Visit the website. Hit up my buddy, Mr. Hempel-Stillskin. It's unbelievable. It really is. Locally grown. Support your small entrepreneurs and your local people where right now the government's destroying the businesses of the local people. So go out to Sweet Heal. It's going to help you mentally, physically, socially. And if you give it to your friends, they're going to love you. Just like if you tell people about this podcast and about Chaos Corner down here in the bunker, people are going to love you for that. You know that. What happened here? See, that's why this show is going to be different. Not only as I'm bouncing around down here on Chaos Corner, it knocked over my Elvis memorabilia. I'm a big Elvis fan. A lot of people, Elvis and the Beatles. I'm an Elvis fan. Unbelievable memorabilia. This is from Graceland itself, courtesy of the Chaos Mom. God bless you, Mom. We miss you. Also, the mold that I had specifically made probably about, I don't know, 8 years ago of my wife. And when I show this, she gets pissed. And I know it's not always appropriate, but this is a different show here on show number 36. I already told you that. I don't know if it's going to be a part 1 or part 2. We're going to cover the book. We're going to kick back, but I'll just quickly, because we keep it, you know, although I put it up here not for kids, really unbelievable. I'll just do it all the way around, and then I'll get it out of the way. An actual mold of my wife. I love you, baby. Let me get, I know, I get it. I understand. Okay, we're back. Show number 36, here down in the bunker. No copyright infringements here. I've done my research for all you streamers and podcasters, and a lot of people are listening to me, and they have taken my advice on the bigger shows. When it comes to music and copyrights, as long as you're talking through it and talking over like a voiceover, a la like on radio, there is no copyright infringement. So they can't really do anything about that as long as you continue to talk and make it like a voiceover. But we don't want to break the rules because we love it here on YouTube. And we love it on social media. And we want to continue to stream. So let me put that out there too. Once we get into the book, we're going to turn down the solar energy. There's really only one person here today, so there'll be no heckling, we don't think. Although, you see, I was heckled about the mold. So that's this is what I'm going to get into. We're 12 minutes in. I'm going to lower this down. All right? Great song, though. The Doobie Brothers. I got to charge it up. Again, all kidding and jokes aside, thanks for being here. What you're going to see now, okay, and we're developing watch-alongs. That's coming next from down here in the bunker. We're going to start doing some old-time watch-alongs. But I want to get into this book. Again, The Complete Idiot's Guide, Capt.Lou, Albano, Bert Sugar. The foreword is by Bill Goldberg. I've been talking about this for weeks, and seeing that we have the time and it's another snow day, I want to really get into this and explain this book to you and what it's all about. So you're going to see me and hear me read. Now, listen. I went to college. College was the greatest 7 years of my life. So you're looking at a college-educated man. So bear with me here. My linguistic skills shouldn't be that bad, although I have a hall, as you see. You know what's going on. We're in the middle of the winter solstice. Although, pitchers and catchers and reporting the spring training, is there a pandemic? Let me get off that because that's my go-to sport. I can't ruin that. Everything else has been ruined by social justice and the mainstream media and everything else and politics and the government. I can't let it ruin. It's not hitting me in the pro wrestling world, but I have to make sure it doesn't get me in baseball. I love baseball. Let's get on to the task at hand. Consider this my opening monologue before you hit me and leave comments. Oh, and I appreciate everyone's critique and feedback. You put too many other people over. You talk about everything else before you get to the subject. Well, that's what it's called, and that's why it's my channel, and I'm glad that you're here. And you know what I always say, and I don't like to say this. If you don't like the content of the channel, all you got to do is change it. Hit the thumbs down. It's not. I don't give a fuck. Sorry, I apologize for that. I got to apologize to the one person down here? No. You got it. All right, here we go. Fans, again, the book, and I'll wrap it up here. We're going to start with the foreword. Now, the foreword is by Goldberg. Now, let's put this in concept of when this was written. This is over 20 years ago. So keep that in concept as we're almost 15 minutes here on Chaos Corner, show number 36, live to tape, same-day coverage. This is Goldberg speaking, so if you come in on 15 minutes, you'll know this is Goldberg talking as the foreword to the book here right now. As you undoubtedly know, I rarely speak out, but when I was approached to write the foreword to this book on professional wrestling, I thought it would be an honor to add my voice to it. An honor to attach my name to a book that is a must for all wrestling fans. One that takes you behind the scenes, behind the glitz and the glamour, and tells you about the great people, the great talent, and the great athletes in the world of pro wrestling. Now, I know there's a stereotypical picture of the professional wrestler. Most people think we're a lot of fake people, non athletic, all show. But we're totally different from what you've been led to believe. For even though we're outrageous and outlandish in the ring, we're different outside. Outside, we're real people, well rounded, very approachable, good guys and girls, what we're doing to earn a living. Sure, I take it personally when someone says professional wrestling is fake. After all, like all wrestlers, I have my pride. Anybody in the business. You've got to have great self-pride to face millions of people every week dressed in nothing but your underwear, or like the way I am. But we know what we do is real. Real in terms of our athleticism, real in terms of our ability to entertain, and real in terms of our being able to capture the imagination of people everywhere. And I say it on here all the time, and I've been saying it for over 30 years. That's my part. To give you an example of how we've transferred the fanaticism of kids to their parents, earlier this season I had a chance to visit Mark McGuire in the St. Louis Cardinals locker room. I thought it was funny when he asked me for an autograph for his son, who was a wrestling fan and made his father into one. Mark McGuire, remember the time frame we're in here. This is 21 years ago. I'm the luckiest wrestler in the world to be in the position I'm in. Through wrestling, I've had a chance to reach out to the masses, not those typical masses you think that follow wrestling, but the football players, baseball players, even cabinet members who like wrestling because it's entertaining and fun, and to reach out because of the exposure we've gotten on the TBS Turner Broadcasting System. Again, fans, keep the perspective of the time frame into consideration here, which televises us 5 hours a week, creating the opportunity to make new friends and fans of pro wrestling, and that's what the current product does now. It's on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. You get a little break on Thursday. It's on Fridays. You have Saturday special events and pay-per-views, and then Sundays are the typical pay-per-views. So this is the same concept, and this is over 20 years ago, and you can apply it to 2021. So when he talks about TBS, that still applies. So to my fans, to Turner Broadcasting, to the WCW, and not incidentally to Lou and Bert for asking me to write the foreword to the book that every fan needs, I want to speak my piece and say, and I'll say this too, coming from the G.O.C. Thank you for making professional wrestling what it is today. Fun! Plain and simple fun. So that was the quote. Again, you heard WCW, Turner Broadcasting. We're going back 21 years ago when TBS really did a lot for the business, and as did Turner, not into the mess that it is now in 24-hour in the mainstream media and CNN. Don't get me started. All news networks. Don't get me started on the mainstream. I don't rely on that. I rely on this. Now, Bill Goldberg defeated legend Hollywood, formerly Hulk Hogan, for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship title on July 6, 1998, a year before this was written. A former star nose guard with the Georgia Bulldogs and NFL with the Atlanta Falcons and the Los Angeles Rams, Goldberg switched to pro wrestling when he suffered an injury. The 6'4", 285-pound powerhouse is known for his crushing jackhammer and for inspiring Goldberg, or as a lot of people are saying now, Oldberg, which I find disrespectful, although I'm no Goldberg Mark, or a guy that I worked with before, and thank God he's healthy, and you just saw him on TV recently, Goldberg. And the reason why I'm talking about that, and those chants were known through arenas throughout the country, and then look how long, to where he's still relevant today, to where no matter what his demands are, no matter where he is and what you want to say about Goldberg in today's 2021 and what he did with Bray Wyatt over in Saudi Arabia and what he's done in the current shows, and he did give the rub to McIntyre. So he's given the rub to Roman Reigns. I mean, so he has changed and turned around, but look at from here in 99, 2000, prior to 9/11, it's changed everything in the world, not just pro wrestling. you see how relevant he was and still is. So that was the forward here. This is what we're covering, fans, as we're 20 minutes in here on show number 36, live to tape same day coverage with your old buddy. It's me. It's the G.O.C. Different show than most, not reporting on the live updates, but we'll always refer back. I know Elimination Chamber's coming up this weekend, and we had a big week from AEW and Impact and MLW. I understand Ring of Honor, a lot of different things going on. This is what we're covering. I implore you, again, I'm going to say it again. I don't have to keep saying it. So that's why he was on the forward here. Now we're going to go into the introduction. Okay, let me flip through here and then explain certain things that are in the book. Again, it's going to be me reading, so if you can tolerate me, again, I got it up here. I think you can understand. I think, a lot of people talking about my reception, different people I've spoke with, great people in this industry, whether it be Avi Klein from Wrestling With Anything But, or Boogie Bentley and Yule, a Comic Book Bob from the Wrestling Council, and different people I've hooked up with the technical issues. It's great down here, but we got it going on. I just wanted to bring that up. Now, here's the introduction. Now, remember the time frame in the year, and we're going to flash back here on a Friday, a flashback Friday. The year was 1949. The place was Washington, D.C. And like every young man who had not yet found girls, I found sports, or what passed for sports in that time and that place. I found that wonderful world, picturesque names like Gorgeous George, Antonina Rocca, and Primo Carnera dotted the landscape of professional wrestling. The defining moment for this young man in the world of wrestling was maybe when I, as a 13-year-old, I somehow found myself first to get through on a radio phone line with the now long-forgotten answer to an equally long-forgotten sports trivia question, and I won 2 free tickets to an upcoming wrestling bout between Gorgeous George and Primo Carnera. It was ecstasy, it was a joy, and it was terror. For how on earth was a 13-year-old boy going to get away with attending a late-night wrestling bout held across town and on a school night to boot? But that was a problem soon solved. My mother was normally so sportive that she thought Sugar Ray Robinson was my dad's first cousin on his father's side. Assumed that because one of the names on the card was Primo Carnera, I'd won tickets to a boxing match. Boxing was far more presentable than wrestling, and since it was a free show, after all, he had won the 2 tickets, she decided she'd escort me to it. Remember, this is the introduction to the book saying this. I'm reading in his voice to you. Imagine her surprise when she found herself seated smack dab in the middle of a crowd of people, all looking like they were a few beans short of a 3-bean salad. Many of her fellow female matchgoers, women who were then known as Hat Pin Marys, were running around the arena trying to stab a wrestler or two. True stories. Suffice it to say, the whole thing didn't live up to her expectations. But that made no never mind to her son. I was immediately caught up in the moment, and what a moment. There was excitement going on everywhere around me. The first wrestling bout I ever attended, however, was something of an anticlimax. Gorgeous George, he of the thick red neck and flabby white hide, which made a marked contrast with his golden coiffure, tried a couple of underhanded moves on Carnera. All he got for his efforts was a disdainful sneer from his da prime, as Carnera was often called. Then grabbing one fish-belly white leg out from under his adversary, Carnera lifted Gorgeous George aloft and slammed him back down on the mat, stepping down hard on the now prostrate George's abdomen. Gorgeous George. The referee got down on all fours to pound the canvas 3 times. In 2 bats of an eye, the main event was over. No matter. That was the beginning of a lifelong love affair with the sport entertainment of wrestling, and it hardly mattered that my appalled mother didn't speak to me for the next 2 months. My punishment for having dragged her to the event in the first place. Great story. Let me continue here. Stand by, fans. Let me continue. Show number 36, live to tape here on the Chaos, Guardian of Chaos YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit me up on all social media platforms. Little break here. Here, take a look at the cover. This is good stuff here. This is history in the making. I also don't like dead air. I hear a lot of different people talking about it. Even my buddy over at Rotella Streams, Adam Rotella, was talking about it on a new streaming platform, D Live. I'm going to try to get over there and see what's going on. He was telling me too, dead air. I went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, late 80s. Learned a lot about dead air back in high school. I'm going to say late 70s, early 80s. I worked at WLNV 90.1 FM for an internship. And this is where it all started. And you see where we are now in 2021. Back to the task at hand. Complete Idiot's Guide of Pro Wrestling. We're delving into it deeper. Bert, Randolph, Sugar, and the legendary Capt.Lou Albano, who is basically who my character is hugely based upon. Sorry about the distraction and interruption there. Let's continue with the story. To be sure, the intensity of that first wild infatuation with wrestling dropped off rather precipitously once I discovered girls. Refer back to the earlier part of the show with the model of my wife. However, this book gives me the opportunity to revisit that once intense love that dates back to those more innocent days. More innocent for yours truly and for wrestling itself. Professional wrestling since then has changed greatly, but then again, so have I. And so has society. Back then, when men were men and women were glad of it, wrestling was a clear-cut case of black and white. Good guys were always good, bad guys were always horrid. Rudo, you get where I'm going with that, la lucha libre. And there was nothing ambiguous in between. Now in the days of laser light shows and tortured wrestling characters, things aren't so clear. But it's all the greatest entertainment extravaganza there is. So while this book pays tribute to some of those wonderful legends of wrestling's early years, I've also tried to make it a no-holds-barred look at the whole wacky, over-the-top world of wrestling, a world that would have made P.T. Barnum proud. And I just watched the movie from a few years back, P.T. Barnum, not bad. And you wonder why people come up with the term or where the term carny, and unbelievable. In this book, you'll find a history of wrestling from its earliest days to the modern era of pay-per-view and multimedia events. Biographies of some of the major wrestling personalities, from the stars to the managers to the promoters, who contributed to making wrestling the greatest sports entertainment available today. Insider information on the rules, the moves, and the magic of professional wrestling. Like I said, fans, I lived this book. Advice on where to go and what you'll find when you get there if you're interested in a career in professional wrestling for yourself. Tips on how to keep up with your favorite stars, cash in on collecting, or meet up with fellow fans on the internet. Well, isn't that what I'm doing now? So here's a rundown on what's in the pages to come. Again, this is 20 years ago. Part 1, this crazy world called pro wrestling. Clues you in on the broad appeal of wrestling and a brief overview of how the sport developed. You'll get your first introduction to the federations that run the sport and the major figures behind the evolution of wrestling from its early scientific Greco-Roman days today. Part 2, the Founding Fathers, Wrestling's Colorful History. Provides you with the biographies of the greatest wrestlers of all time, yesterday, today, and maybe even tomorrow. Anecdotes of famous figures from wrestling's past and present are accompanied with photographs of some of the most memorable men and women you could ever hope to meet. The world of professional wrestling, as you see behind me, what I bring to you here, what the Guardian of Chaos is all about in Chaos Corner. That's why we're not different. We're not better. We just are who we are, because we live it. And there's a chapter of rowdy rivalries of revenge that gives you all the inside scoop on the famous feuds that power pro wrestling storylines. And that's where I talk about psychology and storytelling and emotional investment, telling the story. Part 3, Modern Madness, Wrestling Today. Again, let's put the time frame in. This is 2000. 99 2000, tells the story of how wrestling came from its carnival origins and was transformed into today's form by focusing on the people who participated in that transformation. You'll learn about the managers and the promoters and their long histories of hyping and developing their stars and their sport. And you'll learn about some of the specific ways wrestling was brought out of its Depression era doldrums and into the modern times. The introduction of women's wrestling and novelty acts, the explanation of wrestling into television and the world of arena wrestling. Still the best way to see it, feel it, and have it all. And that's why this pandemic and what's going on over the last year and what it's done to the world of pro wrestling. And you could find this now from 20, 21 years ago as current as it is today, except for the product and maybe the people that do it. That's the game doesn't change, the names change. That's what we're talking about here. And that's why if you don't go, we're 30 minutes in here, and I'm going to continue to update you on this. Part 4, all the right moves, inner and outer. And again, before we move on to part 4, I will say there is nothing like it. And we all know that, whether you're a performer, you're a talent, you're an artist, you're in the business, you're not in the business, you're a fan, you're an insider, you're media. There is nothing like being at a live event, especially if you go back to the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and perhaps even into the 90s before it lost its luster. Like a lot of different things in society, I'll never forget my first days in the early 70s at the old New Haven Arena and the New Haven, which turned into New Haven Coliseum, the Hartford Civic Center, the Boston Garden, of course, Madison Square Garden, the Meadowlands, the Nassau Coliseum. I've hit them all as far as a fan. Was never fortunate enough to perform in any one of those venues, but was as a fan, and I'm giving you a fan's perspective. There's nothing like it, and being able to witness that and back, society has changed so much, but can you relate to that? Can't we all relate to that? So we'll move on to part 4, but that really hit home right there on that one. All the right moves, inner and outer, workings of the ring, moves off into a whole nother direction. Here you'll learn about where the wrestlers go to develop their skills, a la PAPW, and where you can go yourself if you want a career in a sport, a la PAPW. And it pulls back the curtain on how the classic and modern moves are done, as well as on how the tricks of the trade are pulled off, a la PAPW. Plus, there's a quick peek inside the wrestling locker room, the real insider's look at the wrestler's world, a la PAPW. Part 5, Beyond the Square Wrestling Extras. It's included for you, the fan, people here now. It's everything you need to know if you want to keep track of your favorite wrestlers, managers, federations, or events. In it, you'll learn where to go for information, collectibles, and even how to connect up with fellow fans on the internet. Again, this was 21 years ago, 20 years ago. You see how different it is now with all these different promotions and events and conventions and signings and collectibles, and it's really off the hook, and the virtual signings. I mean, it's really grown. How apropos and how great is this book, and that's why I bring it to you, and that's what you get here. In the extras, in addition to all this, there are sidebars scattered throughout the text. These will give you definition of wrestling's colorful terms, insiders' comments, a few warnings, and reminiscences and anecdotes from sports writers and wrestlers. Here's what to look for. WrestleMania is one of the sidebars. Here you'll find anecdotes and insider information about professional wrestling past and present. Also, there's Bert's Corner. The authors step out from behind the page to pass along a comment, clarification, or colorful tale. And no one told them like Bert Randolph Sugar. Fighting words, definitions of terms drawn from the wrestling world. Since much of wrestling's language comes from the carny lingo, and I've covered it many times, called kayfabe, you'll need these sidebars as your decoder ring. You see what I'm bringing to you people out here. I mean, this isn't a secret. This isn't rocket science. This is doing your research and homework and adding credibility to someone who lived it. Again, I'll refer to PAPW, Paradise Alley. Also, Capt.Lou's Corner, where this Chaos Corner originally was part of the idea of where it came from, along with a couple of my buddies at PAPW who suggested it. Chaos Corner, Capt.Lou's Corner, and as I referred to yesterday on show number 35, I was on Mario Mancini's corner, Mario's Corner, on WWAB Wrestling with Anything But on Paul Roma and Avi Klein's podcast, Maintaining the Truth. So there's a lot of corners out there. I guess there's a corner for everyone, but, Piper started it all off with Piper's Pit, I guess. But for me personally, Capt.Lou, Chaos Corner. So Capt.Lou's Corner. The author steps out from behind the page to pass along a comment, clarification, or colorful tale. Again, the same thing to Bert Sugar's comments and the columns and sidebars that you'll find in this book. A complete idiot's guide to pro wrestling. Body slam. Warnings. There are things that you as a fan should know, so read them and heed them. Let that be a warning. It still applies, whether it's 20 years ago, 50 years ago, or last year. And then there's in your face. Short, sometimes scabrous quotes or observations about the wacky world and the people in it, a la yours truly, the Guardian of Chaos. But, it's about reality, respect, and passion, and dedication that I put in there myself. So those are the different sidebars that you'll find in this. Very, very interesting quotes and facts and things that you fans and even insiders and even the boys may have forgotten. Okay? Acknowledgements. Without them, we'd have nothing to say. And that's the same thing I say here on Chaos Corner and on my all my social media platforms. So here's our thanks to all the wrestling pros out there, from the performers to the promoters, and thanks to the federations, particularly the WWF, this was back at that time, for their assistance on the project. A special thanks to Vince McMahon for giving us access to the photographs that enliven this book's pages. Finally, thanks to Gary Krebs, Bob Schulman at Alpha Books, and Nancy Grattan for editing. That's all from Alpha Books in this book right here. Again, a must-read for anyone that's in the business, out of the business, or even a casual. And then, of course, there's trademarks. You always have to put it in there, so I'll put it out there too. All terms mentioned in this book that are known to be or are suspected of being trademarks or service marks have been appropriately capitalized. Alpha Books and Macmillan General, so on and so forth, can attest to the accuracy of this information. Use of a term in this book should not be regarded as affecting the validity of any trademark or service mark or marks in general. Well, don't get offended. We're all marks. So don't be a bunch of babies. I'm a mark too. You bunch of marks. And then here we go into, as we're coming up on 37, almost 38 minutes in of the complete Pro Wrestling's Guide, Complete Idiot's Guide to Pro Wrestling. And part one is this crazy world called pro wrestling. And again, you'll find a lot of things in here, whether it be pictures, autographs, artists. And I'll just put it up to the camera so you can check it out. We're not going to delve into that. We'll move forward and forge on to other things. That's the first chapter. So hopefully you can see it, and I put it up there. Again, if you see nail gloss on my nails, my granddaughter, I let her paint the nails, put a little gloss on them. Cut me some slack, will you please? Down here in Chaos Corner, show number 36, live to tape, same day coverage. Down here in the bunker in another snowstorm. So that's the beginning of the book here that I'm glad that I finally had a chance to delve in to give to you guys. I've read this, I'll bet you, in the last 5 years, I've probably read this twice. And this is the third time I'm covering it. But since I've gotten this book, I bet you I've read it 50 times. I've lent it out probably about 150 times. Yes, I've cleaned everything off. It's all sanitized and fresh, and don't worry about it. So as we go on to here, the part one of this crazy world called pro wrestling, and we talked about the different sidebars, and that's what I'm going to bounce onto as I go through this here, and we get ourselves up to close to at least 45 minutes, perhaps an hour, because I'm having a lot of fun, and I hope you're having a lot of fun too of listening to what I'm bringing here, which is exclusive material, at least until you go out and get it. And it's forgotten, it's outdated, but the information is not, and what happens, and again, as people that lived it. We talked about the WrestleMania sidebar extra, Bert's Corner, Fighting Words, Capt.Lou's Corner, Body Slam, and In Your Face. So we're going to go to those comments in the different chapters. So this is part one, this crazy world called pro wrestling. In this chapter, the method in wrestling's madness, soap operas of the canvas stage keep fans coming back. The fans, everyone's invited, and appearances are deceiving. So let's Muscle Mania and Mayhem, Chapter 1. Here's the first body slam. Don't sneer at wrestling fans. You might be surprised at some of the celebrities that have turned out for the WrestleMania events. Mary Tyler Moore, Robin Leach, Vanna White, Gladys Knight, Liberace, and Alex Trebek have all been in attendance at one event or another, and of course we know over the last 2 decades you can triple the amount of mainstream and Hollywood people and entertainers that have gone on into the business, including Donald J. Trump, our former president of the United States, who's in the WWE Hall of Fame, who was in that legendary, I believe it was WrestleMania 23? Bueller? Anyone? WrestleMania 23? Maybe 24? I'm pretty good. Where Trump and McMahon and the hair versus hair match. So, Body Slam, those are the people that have been associated, and many, many more. We could throw in Muhammad Ali. The list goes on and on. Mike Tyson. Shaquille O'Neal's going to be back again in AEW, and he's been all over the place. So there's been many, many stars, and that's what makes wrestling great. So that's on the first Body Slam here on Chaos Corner. Bert's Corner. The 2 major organizations in wrestling today responsible for the most of the cable wrestling program are Vince McMahon Jr.'s World Wrestling Federation in Stamford, Connecticut, the shadows of Titan Towers, kind of like Chaos Corner, and Ted Turner's World Championship Wrestling, WCW, in Atlanta, Georgia. And boy, have times changed. Now remember, this is 20 years ago, 21 years ago. What they failed to mention is ECW was still alive. Okay, AWA wasn't. Impact, TNA, WCW. So remember where we are in the time frame of this. So that's the first Bert's Corner here. So you can realize where we are. We are back to the future here on Chaos Corner, down in the bunker. Here's the first WrestleMania from the book. The WWF and WCW have had one pay-per-view broadcast each month leading into the pay-per-view broadcasts. The regular Monday night shows spend time developing the storylines that culminate into the pay-per-view face-offs. How apropos is all this? Since the pay-per-view shows are already broadcast on Sunday nights, the Monday after is always dedicated, as we all know, as the fallout, to handling the big fights results and then to begin setting up the storyline for the next pay-per-view bout, including and scheduling for the following month, which as we are now on the road to WrestleMania or in AEW, it's Revolution. So you see the basic concept of what they did even over 20 years ago. So that's the first WrestleMania here on Chapter 1. Here's another Bert's Corner. Monday night telecast of WWF and WCW matches. And now we're always talking about ratings. Everybody's always putting out ratings. Alvarez, Meltzer, Wrestling Observer, The Torch, Busted Open Radio, PWI Insider, right? Everybody's putting out ratings. Even, JD covers it now on their podcast and different people. So here's Bert's Corner. In regards to ratings of what they are now, which Fox is, SmackDown on Fox is averaging under 2 million now. Monday Night Raw is averaging under 2 million and has been for quite some time. AEW and NXT are both hovering around 750 to 800,000 on a Wednesday night each show, although in the quarter hours, AEW has bounced over 1 million a bunch of times. So if you look at all the ratings, they're very, very low. And you're going to see as I read Bert's Corner here. Monday night's television and telecast of WWF and WCW matches garner combined ratings as high as a 9.5, the highest rated programming on cable TV, beating out most NBA playoff games. Pay-per-view telecasts pull in $300 million in a year in broadcast fees alone. Now that's big. Big Daddy. You see what I did there? So how about that? Now, this is 20 or 21 years ago. So if you go to the business of the business and the analytics of what's going on today, and you follow some of the websites and the current people in 2021, the different ratings, you see what it did back then. You know, Vince right now doesn't care about his product, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm talking about just being creative, but he's still making money from investors and from NBC Universal and Peacock and Saudi Arabia and Fox. So why change anything? But you see what it was back then, a 10 rating. Let's just say that 300 million a year in broadcast fees alone. That's 21 years ago. So that's the first Bert's Corner. We're 45 minutes here, fans, and we're going to cover this in a series of shows and podcasts here on Chaos Corner. So I don't want to make these redundantly long. I could sit here and probably cover this book and be here for a 3 or 4 hour, 5 hour stream, but I don't want to bore you, fans. I want you to do it in segments, and we'll go by chapter by chapter. I find it much more interesting, and it's a nice refresher for yours truly. Here's the first WrestleMania column here in the sidebars here for as we cover the complete idiot's guide to pro wrestling. Capt.Lou Albano and Bert Randolph Sugar, circa 1999. Internet web, and this is all funny to read this now, is it not? You're paying attention, right? Internet websites featuring wrestling are everywhere, and most have links to even more sites, so you can spend days digging up insider information, interviews, match results, trivia, photos and sound clips, and so much more. Official sites like WWF, WCW, ECW are all home pages, and look what it's turned into now, 21 years later. This is really like Back to the Future. Here's another Capt.Lou's Corner. Everybody knows that sex sells, and wrestling's no exception. Sexy valets and the skimpily clad Nitro girls keep the male fans turning in or turning out to the arenas. It's all part of the show, and that's what really hurt the traditional manager. It's funny when the TNA came in and valets, and it kind of X'd out guys like Capt.Lou and yours truly in my day. It's funny, not Capt.Lou, he was a legend, but you understand the different time frames. And it really did drive out the traditional old school manager, what I think they desperately need, and that's what AEW does now by bringing back all the legends, whether it be Tully, Arn, Jake, Taz, so on and so forth. I agree with it. I like it. Even WE bringing back a Goldberger or this one or that one, the older guys to come out. People will say part-timers. I like it as long as you're used the right way and it's given the rub and no one's making demands. You guys got to have your head up your asses not to agree with that. They're not taking anybody's spot. They're not taking away from anyone else. It's for the fans and the history and nostalgia and for the boys to keep working and to give the rub to promote the current stars, because these people in creative nowadays don't know how to create certain stars or don't really know how to create any big stars. They get lucky now and then. And that's the facts, and that's why I tell it like it is, and that's what you get here. Let's go on to another Bert's Corner. According to Hollywood Hogan, once wrestling's insiders went public that the bouts are choreographed, never call them fake, the fan base exploded. Now it's not just the 18 to 34-year-old male demographic. Whole families buy tickets to the events, and that's what makes it relevant today as it was 21 years ago, over 2 decades ago. We talk about ratings, we talk about fans, they talk about demographics. That's the whole thing AEW and WWE are going through right now. It's unbelievable how it circles around or repeats itself. And I don't want to sound like the current press secretary and make this political. I'll circle back. Circle this. You sound like a clown. Here's the next WrestleMania sidebar here in the book. Before the late 1930s, wrestling was almost exclusively a men's night out. Mildred Burke, former women's wrestling champion, was the first of her gender to enter the ring. She tells of the first match she ever attended back in 1937 in Kansas City. In a crowd of 3,000 or 4,000, you'd see maybe 6 or 7 women. At the most, they were probably the wives of the wrestlers. Women didn't really start coming out of the wrestling matches in large numbers until women began participating as wrestlers. And that was Mildred Burke talking about the 30s and 40s. This book released 21 years ago, and look where women's wrestling is now and how great the women's athletes are and the top ones in the sport, whether it be from WWE, NXT, AEW, Impact. It really is something. So that's another WrestleMania column. Here's a body slam sidebar from the book. As more and more younger viewers have gotten hooked on wrestling, it has come up for some heavy criticism, as usual. The foul language, the nonstop violence, and the sexual innuendo have all been cited as bad examples for the kids. Still, as Bonnie Hammer, Senior Vice President of the USA Network, says, I don't know where Bonnie is now. My husband grew up watching it, and he wound up in Harvard Divinity School. I mean, I don't know what that says. I don't know what that means. You figure it out for yourself as we're 50 minutes in here. Stand by, fans. Stand by. Let me take a little break here. We see, yes, the Oakleys. You gotta love the Oakleys, but we gotta make sure they're clear. You gotta be able to see it. What a book this is. And like I said, we're 50 minutes in here, down in a bunker on a snow day, live to tape. Unbelievable. Again, remember, spring training is coming, so that's something we have to look forward to. This book, A Complete Idiot's Guide to Pro Wrestling, it's not what you think it is. Go out and get it. Email me, text me, inbox me, and we'll talk about it. Let me have another little sip here. A little dead here. I get it, CSB. That's why you might change the channel. Let me make sure. That's why I'm trying to adjust these. So I'll go on probably another 10 minutes. I'm enjoying myself here. I hope you are too. We'll get through this first chapter of the sidebars here. Again, this is what we're covering here on show number 36. Chaos Corner, A Complete Idiot's Guide to Pro Wrestling. Capt.Lou, Bert, Randolph, Sugar, and of course, my reading. Let me know. Email me at chaosbigdaddy, the number 2, at yahoo.com. That's right, CHAOS, Big Daddy, the number 2, at yahoo.com. Give me your feedback. What do you think of my linguistic skills? Did Evelyn Wood help me out? Did my high school education and college education from the class of somewhere back in the 1980s from college, did it help me out? Give me your feedback. Let me know what I need to work on. Critique me, inbox me on all my social media platforms. Good, bad, or other. I can handle it. It's okay. All right, back to the task at hand. Let's get on to the next WrestleMania. Part 1, this crazy world called pro wrestling. These are the different sidebars that I explained to you. Wrestling hit new heights of popularity when the WWF owner and promoter Vince McMahon staged the first WrestleMania in front of 23,000 screaming fans at Madison Square Garden and broadcast the bout live on pay-per-view. The first broadcast featured Hulk Hogan, Rowdy Roddy Piper, Paul Orndorff, Cowboy Bob Orton, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Barry Windham, Mike Rotunda, Nikolai Volkov, the Iron Sheik, King Kong Bundy, and Andre the Giant. Wow. A star-studded cast that included Mr. T, Liberace, Muhammad Ali, Billy Martin, and Cyndi Lauper. Back to that comment in that column about all the stars that have been associated from mainstream. So how about that? WrestleMania 1, fans, back to the 80s, there wasn't a better time. The 70s were great, in my opinion. I'm sure a lot of people could say the 60s were good. I think the 70s wrestling was fantastic, old school. The 80s exploded. It was phenomenal to me. NWA, AWA, WWF. And then once we got into the later 80s and into the 90s, it was tremendous. And throughout the 90s, it wasn't bad. Even the horrible WCW part at one time. 2000s, and when this book was written a little afterwards, things have really changed. No disrespect to the current stars or product. It's not your fault because the athletes are amazing. But you see the history and what happened even from 20 and 20 years ago, what they talk about here and where it is now. Wow. WrestleMania 1 was unbelievable. I remember it like yesterday. Here's, I believe, the first in your face from this book. Is everybody pleased with wrestling's admission that some of the show is staged? Not at all. If you print that kind of stuff, it ruins it. People like to forget it. It's pretend. Quote from Eric Bischoff, former wrestling announcer, sometimes wrestler, and current president of WCW. Now 83 weeks in his whole history. Again, this is 21 years ago. So you see where Bischoff was in the business back then. Death in the ring. Wrestlers who have died during a match, as we're in the Lent season. Eddie Baker, Jim Browning, Dennis Cleary, Mike DiBiase, Eli Fisher, Gino Garibaldi, Ray Gunkel, George Kinney, Jack Lewis, Gordon McKinley, Buddy O'Brien, Mike Romano, Joe Shimkus, Tex Wright, and Steve Zanoski. Remember the era. This is back to the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and this book was written 21 years ago. But that was a column here in the part of the book of the Pro Wrestling Idiot's Guide or The Idiot's Guide to Pro Wrestling. Here we come to another Bert's Corner here in the first chapter. In many states, professional wrestling is labeled entertainment, not sport. Vince McMahon of the WWF was largely responsible for this distinction, removing wrestling from the jurisdiction of state athletic commissions, which were established to oversee the sport of boxing, not wrestling. Not in New York. They still got that damn commission. They tried to get me a couple times. How about that for information? Always remember that. Vince was the one who took the F out. I mentioned that in the last show. Here's another in your face. Wrestlers have personas and storylines are tailored around them, says Stone Cold Steve Austin. My character is blue-collar type thing. I got to go out there and be unimpressed by authority. They tell me I can't do something, I go ahead and do it. It's kind of like a soap opera. I've said that for how many years since you've been listening to me? Over 3 decades. There it is from Stone Cold Steve Austin. We're coming up on almost an hour, and we're almost done here on the Chapter 1 sidebars. And then I think we'll wrap up show number 36 here of Chaos Corner. Speaking of that, here's another Capt.Lou's Corner. The heat pro wrestling takes for being fake is really unfair. Pulitzer Prize-winning sports writer Red Smith once attended a real boxing match in the company of Lou Thez, one of wrestling's all-time greats. And rumor had it that the fight was fixed. No one believed it until the knockout came on a flimsy backhand. Smith said to Thez, "Lou, I'll never write an unkind word about wrestling again. At least you guys make it look like a contest." That's what I say about all the time when pro wrestling is the toughest thing you'll ever do. Step into the ring. I don't care if it's pro football, basketball, hockey, soccer, rugby, baseball, whatever your sport is. Try pro wrestling, gymnastics, strongman, martial arts. Get into a pro wrestling ring. It's the toughest thing you've ever done in your life. All these other athletes have tried it. Some have been successful, some haven't, but it's a different life, especially the travel and the politics, and I say it all the time. Again, that's why I say I lived this book. I feel like I co-authored it, and Capt.Lou did, and Bert Randolph, so it's kind of like in my head, I did. Great point, Capt.Lou's corner on that one about Lou Thez. Bert's Corner. Barney Bernard, known as the Chest, weighed 265 pounds. His chest, when expanded, measured 63 inches. One of the men that trained me, the legendary Kenny Fontano from the Quest and the Phoenix and the owner of the Muscle Factory back in the 80s, had a 66-inch chest at one time, and I witnessed him in the gym bench 660 pounds. Everyone talks about Kazmaier and Ted Arcidi. No disrespect, Arcidi was unbelievable, 705 and whatever the record was at that point. Kenny Fontano, the legendary strongman who trained me, 660 back in the 80s. Unbelievable, 66-inch chest. Right here, Barney Bernard, 63 inches. So nice tradition right there, huh? Here we go now. We're at the end of Chapter 1, so we're going to wrap this up. I can't thank you, fans, for being here enough. It's a snow day. I hope I entertained you. This will be up very, very shortly. Show number 36. More content is coming. Don't go anywhere, but we're going to wrap up a complete idiot's guide to pro wrestling and the sidebars that I've been mentioning here for Chapter 1, which is this crazy world called pro wrestling. And Chapter 2, which we'll cover on the next show, or when we get back to covering this book, unbelievable. A brief history of wrestling. You're not going to want to miss that one. Here's the least you need to know coming out of today's show, Chaos Corner number 36, and a complete idiot's guide to pro wrestling. Millions of people from all walks of life follow pro wrestling on a regular basis. Wrestling combines compelling characters and storylines of the soap opera with the variety and excitement of a 3-ring circus. Although wrestling is not considered a sport in the true sense of the word, its performers are real athletes, some of the best in the world. They perform real moves, suffer real injuries, and provide real entertainment. There are as many different types of wrestlers as there are types of fans. Everyone can find a favorite to cheer for or somebody they can love to hate. Wrestling's rich history and tradition have been passed down from generations to generations of fans. That's what you need to know coming out of this episode of Chaos Corner, Show number 36, down here at the bunker, covering the complete idiot's guide to pro wrestling by Capt.Lou Albano and Bert Randolph Sugar. Yours truly. Thanks for being here. We're coming up in an hour. Follow me on all social media platforms. I am the Guardian of Chaos. I do tell it like it is. And I'll say that to say this. Don't you dare miss it.